All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Jouberts, and I'll be your host for today. For those who might be new to what we do, we bring science, adventure, exploration, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. Now that the school year is in full swing, we'll be hosting 30, 40, even 50 live events a month for classrooms. So today's a pretty special day. September 22nd is World Rhino Day. We've got a full day of events connecting with explorers, conservationists, filmmakers who are not only documenting what's happening with rhino species around the world, but doing their best to help protect and save these species from extinction. So I'm really excited to have our guests joining us for our next event. We've got Dereck and Beverly Joubert. They are globally recognized award-winning filmmakers, conservationists, and National Geographic explorers in residence. Their mission for more than 30 years has been the conservation of key wildlife species with a focus on large predators. So, faced with a devastating exponential rise in illegal rhino poaching in South Africa, Rhinos Without Borders was formed in order to start moving these endangered animals away from poaching hotspots. So the project aims to translocate rhinos from high-risk areas in South Africa and create other source populations in Botswana's wilderness areas. So I'm going to bring Dereck and Beverly in with us now. Dereck and Beverly, thank you so much for joining us live today.
Thank you, Joe. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, excellent. Well, why don't we get started? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves? And then we're really excited to learn about some of the work you do with Rhinos Without Borders.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, happy Rhino Day to everyone. And we're thrilled that you're taking part in it because it is imperative that we protect them. So I'm Beverly Joubert, and this is Dereck Joubert. But Joe, you've already introduced us. So I think we are eager to go, but really thrilled to be meeting a large, eager audience out there. To all you schoolgoers, a huge hello from Africa.
And of course, we're explorers as well. So that implies that we go out and we do crazy things. We have adventures, but we have a bit of fun as well. So it's always worthwhile remembering to have fun as well.
And conservation is really at the core of everything we do. And so that's why, even though you mentioned, all the big cat work that we've done, the top predators, which we continue doing with National Geographic, the Big Cat Initiative. But when we saw there was a problem with rhinos, we knew that we had to take action. And so that's why you're seeing us in the rhino world as well.
Right, exactly. So we're over to you, Joe, but if there are any questions or anything that you want us to talk through, let us know. We're here.
All right, absolutely. Well, we've got some great images to share. We've also got a few little video clips that we'll share as well. But I'll take this moment to give a little shout out to the groups who are tuning in live via Facebook and YouTube. Use that chat sidebar. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Send us in some questions. And then I want to give a shout out to our camera classroom. So a little bit later in the event, we're going to give you a chance to ask some questions. We've got classrooms in Canada, classrooms in the US. We even have classrooms joining us in the UK today. So we've got a great international audience to join us and learn a little bit more. So Dereck and Beverly, why don't I bring up the photos and you can tell us a little bit about what we're seeing, about some of the process.
Okay, good. So what we've assembled here in the photographic side of things is really a talk through of what it takes to move a rhino. So obviously we wanted to reestablish this pristine mosaic in a different place altogether, but it's no mean feat to actually move a rhino. It takes quite a lot. It takes a lot of people. At some point while we were moving this batch that you'll see here, we had 60 people, military, all sorts of individuals involved. And we're going to talk you through some of that now.
Yeah, so this first image is really important to understand that this is a rhino in the wild. And, it's living its true behavior. But of course, these rhinos are endangered. And they really are endangered because of us, man and woman. And So, you know, we have to look at how we can turn that situation around. And so we took action. So let's go to the next image. And the next image really shows you this is why rhinos are being slaughtered. They've been slaughtered for their horns. And the horns are really, it's a myth that these horns are going to be a medicinal purpose, whether it is to Asia or Africa. It really is like our fingernails. It's the keratin in our fingernails.
So totally. So if you had to all chew off your fingernails and mix it with hair and compact it, this is what it would look like. So I don't recommend you do that, because you get in trouble if you do that. But the street value of horn here is something like $60,000 a kilogram. So what's that, $120,000 a pound or something like that. But that's what it's all about, is this ridiculous horn that's basically keratin, fingernails and hair.
And so really that is bogus, and bogus medicine. And it is our goal, and through the National Geographic, to be able to debunk that myth. And to also show that rhinos are more valuable to Africa alive than dead. They live for about 35 years. So that will bring a bigger economy to the whole country by keeping a rhino alive. Let's go to the next image.
So that's only part of the team there. This is taken outside of the bomas or cages, pens that we use. So mostly we do hot releases where we bring a rhino in, offload it, give it an antidote and let it go. But in case we get the timing wrong, if we get a rhino there in midday, we want to put it in a pen so that it's safe, so it can water it, and then a few hours later let it go.
And so when Dereck says part of the team, when the actual day happens, we could have over 1,000 people. We have the police there, the military there, that giant of a man, his name is Impo. He's in charge, you know, of all the anti-poaching. And so the team goes on. And so many hands are there to assist the move and to make sure that no rhinos are hurt and nobody else is hurt.
I was going to make a joke about Umpu there and just say that little guy next to Beverly, but he's got a size 16 boot. So every now and again, when we really need to shove a rhino, we just call for him. Very, very strong guy.
And he's very passionate and dedicated in protecting the rhinos. He calls them his babies. So the next slide, please.
So we use helicopter. This is the process. Step one is to identify some rhinos. Then we use a helicopter to fly around, make sure that we're not getting mixed up on the age or sex, and then swoop down very, very close, make sure that they get used to the machine so that they're not stressed, and then apply a dart.
And again, important to say that these are wild rhinos. We can't just walk up to them with them, not under sedation. So once the dart is in, the sedation happens, we straight away blindfold the rhino. And that's so that we're not going to traumatize the rhino. We don't want it to have, even though it's sedated, have all these grotesque memories of a huge amount of people running in. And then, of course, we also put little sort of socks that are filled with a substance so that they can't hear all the noise around them. And the activity of the vets coming in, taking blood, all of that happens within 8 to 10 minutes. And then, of course, we move the rhinos from there.
And it's also chaotic because this is a 1.5 ton animal. And I remember on one occasion we couldn't find the little earmuff things to put in. And good old Umpu took off his size 14 boot and gave us his 2 socks. And they did indeed fill the rhino's ear. So
the next. So this next slide is showing you that now this rhino is still sedated, but only marginally so, as you can see. He's got his head up, he's looking like he's ready to protect himself. And so that makes it a lot harder for the team and obviously a lot more dangerous. But the sedation had started to wear off. But now the team's goal, which you'll see on the next slide, is to get this rhino into a crate. And there you can see many hands on deck trying to push him in.
So the technique that we actually use is instead of totally sedating the rhino so it's down and out, then you've got to lift it 1.5 tons and move it into this. We give it a slight antidote so that it can get up on its own, and then we steer it in to the container. So it walks into the container on its own. Although, as Beverly says, it takes 20, 30 people to steer a rhino.
And then in the next slide, you will see that once he's in the crate, the first blindfold is taken off, but the second one is still there. And that's when the veterinary come in from the top, and they will take a little bit of blood again, just to make sure it's not going to be stressed at all. And then, of course, give it the antidote as well. There you've got an insect, a dragonfly. Sorry, it's not a dragonfly. It's a... yeah, it's a grasshopper. Okay.
A terrified one because it's in a cage with a rhino. But the blood samples is really interesting because we take blood samples from a captive rhino through the process every half an hour. And we've been able to publish a paper on exactly how the stress levels are. And we found out through this that it's a lot less stressful to capture a rhino, move it quickly and release it, than keep it in captivity for 4 weeks or whatever it might be.
So in the next image is where you'll see another part of the team, and that really is the military. The military come in with their huge plane that can fit 4 crates with adult rhinos. And the pilots are really dedicated to this cause. They feel very passionate about bringing rhinos back. Instead of rhinos being exterminated, here we bring in rhinos back to an area that didn't have rhinos, but of course it's all about the protection for the future.
So you can see in the back behind me and behind the crew over there, there's a rhino crate. So one interesting little incident here was we rolled these crates out towards the back of the plane, but the weight of 4 rhinos in the 4 crates there was heavier than the plane, and so the plane tipped down. The nose wheel came off and was very, very nearly going to crush things. So I had to crawl in underneath the plane and jack it up. And of course, lying underneath the plane with 4 rhinos above me and the plane creaking and groaning wasn't a very pleasant experience.
So, and at least Dereck is still here with us today, so this is good. So once we've relocated them, if they have a calf with them, we don't just do a hot release, and that a hot release is really open the crate and let them run into the wild. We would then bring them into the boma so mother and calf can reunite, they can bond, they can build up strength with us giving them a lot of water and lucerne, and then we will release them. So this female has a calf waiting for her. And then the next image will make it really evident that that is part of a hot release. So the vehicles are there, the crates are there, and that rhino has come out. But he's come out with great excitement to get out into the wild. You can see the amount of dust he's created.
It's one of those perfect examples that no good deed goes unpunished. Here we are saving these rhinos, and the first thing it did is run out, bang a hole in the container, and smack into my vehicle. But I guess he didn't know what we were actually doing.
So to the next, please.
So yeah, bringing these, if we get it right, we get the rhinos released in the cool of the night. And this was a great release, and apart from one little incident, but a great release where we got them there at exactly the right time as the light faded and as the heat subsided. And then we were able to give it an antidote and let it slowly walk out. The little incident I'm talking about is old Umfu. You can see him in there as well, the big guy. And I had a rope on the front end, and the vet said, "Are you ready? Let's go." And he injected the rhino. And of course, Umfu and I thought that we had the rhino, but in actual fact, the rope slipped through our hands, and a half-sedated rhino ran off into the bush. And it took 30 of us to football tackle this thing to the ground and get it back in. So we very nearly lost this one.
But then, of course, the next slide shows the next slide also shows that there are other ways that we have to move them. And sometimes when there's large rivers and we no longer can take the crate on these big trucks across the river, because obviously, you know, either the truck's going to get stuck, or we feel that, you know, the water could rise up into the crates and the rhinos would drown. So this is where we park at a point and bring in this helicopter that is a very impressive you maybe want to take over on the mechanics of it.
It's a Huey. It's an old Vietnam era Huey. It's still had bullet holes in it from that era, but very, very strong helicopter. And so we bind the legs, ankles of the Rhino, and sling a rope through that, and gently lift the Rhino off, and then fly it across the Okavango to its point of release. And it is interesting. The pilot has a window missing on the one side. And so what he does, instead of looking to see where he's going to drop the Rhino, because you've got to be very careful, you don't want to break the Rhino's back. What he actually does is he watches the shadow of the helicopter and the Rhino. And when the shadow and the helicopter meet, that's obviously where the ground is. And so we released a whole lot like this, not a single injury. We've now moved 87 Rhinos, and they've all been safe.
So the next image will show you why it's worthwhile. Dereck talking about, 87 rhinos and 50 calves out in the wild that have all been born in the wild, running free. And so we can see it as a successful project. And of course, now the goal is, how do we continue to protect them? And that's where it comes to keeping the boots on the ground and a daily vigilance of watching rhinos and making sure that they are going to be fine. So we've got a huge team that is in all the areas where they're relocated, but we keep these areas secret because the secrecy of protecting them is really important.
This particular little rhino has a name. And the rhino monitors came to me one day and they said, can we name this new little baby? And I said, yeah, of course, what are you thinking? And they said, we'd like to name it Beverly, baby Beverly. So I warned them, I said, that's fine, but just remember that one day baby Beverly is going to get quite big. And that may be an insult to big Beverly when baby Beverly grows into her skin. So anyway, they approached Beverly, and of course you were honored and delighted.
I truly was honored and delighted. So it's lovely to know that this little Beverly is now actually almost a mature adult. And so the cycle will happen all over again, which is wonderful.
All right, I'm going to come back from that screen share. Those images are absolutely incredible. And the work that you're doing is just amazing. Seeing the rhino, hanging from the bottom of a helicopter, that's quite a striking image, but you've got to move them. They're big, right? Yeah. Two things kind of stood out from that presentation. One, I'm glad you had those size 14 socks handy and you could plug the rhino's ears on that circumstance. And then Dereck, I'm not sure about your scaling of little incidences. I think maybe they're a bit bigger than little.
Well, I could have been flat at that moment, but it was okay. But the airplane was creaking and groaning, and I was sweating a lot more than I should have for that temperature of a day.
Well, what I can tell you that through these sort of moves, we are on right through the day into the night. There's no stopping. It's 100%. It's almost like we're athletes, but normally an athlete can stop and take a breath. But here you've got these 1-ton rhinos, 1.5-ton rhinos, and you really can't stop until each and every one of them has been released or been tended to in the Burma, and only then you can breathe a sigh of relief. It really is all about getting them out there as secure and stress-free as possible.
Okay, well, I'm going to play a couple little video clips now because I think it'll be great to give the students some context, see a little bit of movement in the field. So I'm going to play the first one now. All right. I love how, quickly that you guys are able to work. 8 to 10 minutes for the whole process is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is actually. The very first one that we caught took us a long time. It took us about 35, 40 minutes from capture into its container. And then an interesting story, we got better and better and better and better. And eventually the last one of that nighttime release. Actually, we did in about 2.5 minutes. And we all congratulated each other. We thought this was fantastic. And we were all high-fiving and saying, 2.5 minutes, this is ridiculous. And then we saw a rhino walking around amongst us. And we realized that we pushed it in the back of the crate, but we forgot to close the front door. So it just walked straight out the other end. So we blew our record there.
All right. So I'm going to play this last little video clip here now.
Dereck, do you want us to move?
All right. I can definitely see how taking a rhino for a walk can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
Well, especially if it stands on your foot, you don't want that.
And then, of course, Joe, we're multitasking all the time. So, in charge of the operation and making sure all that is happening smoothly, but at the same time documenting so that we can eventually have a film come out and utilize the images to help promote the cause. It's really about, let's promote the cause, let's create better awareness that these animals are in trouble. We really only have 15,000 white rhinos left, and less than, in fact, it's between 13,000 and 15,000, and the black rhino numbers are
between 5,000 and 6,000.
5,000 and 6,000. And so we're focusing on the rhinos in Africa. Obviously, there are other rhinos in the world, the Sumatra rhinos, and various others. And so Geographic is working on that, but we're focusing purely on Africa's rhinos.
All right. Well, I think it's time we meet some of our classrooms and we do a little Q&A action. How's that sound?
Great.
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's get started. Let's see. I'm going to bring our first class in. This is Mrs. Brown's group. They're 5th graders. Let me turn their microphone on. How are we doing, 5th graders?
Good.
All right. Great to see you in the classroom. It looks like Mrs. Brown's class, you're joining us from England. Is that right, Huntington?
Yes.
Very cool. All right. Well, who's got a question? Nice and loud for us.
Sure. So what does it feel like when you actually successfully move a rhino?
It's really interesting. It's a great question. It fills your heart. It makes you feel as though you're doing something. And I think there's a tremendous difference that we all face now between doing something and doing nothing. And if we do nothing at all while extinction is looming, we're all lost, and we have that sense of hopelessness. So every time we save or move a rhino, we feel as though we're reconnecting the puzzle. It's like you have a jigsaw puzzle and there's a piece missing. We found the piece and we're putting it back.
All right. I want to give a few shout outs to some groups who are tuning in via YouTube. We've got Mrs. Nali Washco's class joining us in Georgetown, Ontario. We've got Mrs. Mundy's class joining us in Canada as well. Let's see. Mrs. Ardleen's class is joining us. There's some kindergartners. Mrs. Mackey's class. So we've got a question here from YouTube from a kindergarten class, and they want to know, how do rhinos help the environment? How do they help the ecosystem?
So rhinos are really important. They're a keystone species, and it's really about the cropping of the grass and keeping it at a certain, height. And they're moving along, and of course their bodies, 1.5 ton creature, is making an impact on that ecosystem as well. So if you remove a rhino and then you remove hippos and you remove elephants, those are the mega herbivores, and they are imperative to keep the system alive and create a balance, a harmony.
We must assume that nature is perfect. And so without rhinos, nature starts unraveling. So there are all sorts of things, as Beverly says, about grazing and even the movement through and creating paths. But there's so many things we don't yet know about rhinos and the role they play. So we have to protect them because we're going to find out a whole lot more in our lives.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of animals that have a symbiotic relationship with them. So, for instance, the yellow-billed and the red-billed oxpecker, they go onto the skin, they're slowly taking out the lice or the ticks or even wounds, and they're cleaning the wounds. And it's imperative for those little birds to be able to do that, otherwise they won't be able to fly back to their nests and, have the little chicks. But there are so many of these interactions.
If at least all of that, but if only because rhinos, baby Beverly and big Beverly, actually add beauty to the world. For that reason alone, we need to protect them.
All right. Great question from our kindergartners. Mrs. Robinson, I'm going to bring your group in. There are 6 7s, I believe, joining us in Petawawa. How are we doing today, boys and girls?
Petawawa.
Yeah, I think that's in Ontario. So we've got another Canadian class hanging out with us. Do you want to unmute for me? It looks like the mic got muted again.
There we are.
There we go.
So we're from Petawawa, Ontario, and our class is just wondering, you guys have a lot of knowledge and background and where this started from. Did it start at a young age with a background with rhinos? And what drew you to help out with slowing down the extinction from this animal, and just where your background come from?
Well, I was going to say it started just like, being in your classroom and having a love for animals. And then, of course, our parents would take us to the national parks in South Africa. And we started the little adventures and wanted to be explorers. I think both Dereck and I felt like we should have been born 100 years ago and be the true explorer. But now we are explorers at large at National Geographic through all the work that we have done. And what we did is, in around about our 20s, we just said we're going to start that exploration. And we left the cities and went out into the fields. And so that's how we started in the science side of it, then moved to film. But then through our love for what we were seeing, we embraced every aspect of what we were seeing and creating films until we realized that the atrocities to all wildlife has speeded up. It's escalated to a point of understanding that we're losing 95% of all these creatures. And that's where we knew we needed to take action.
So the same sort of journey as a kid. And I can't underemphasize how important this is to all of us to go out into nature, go out into a park, go out into a green space and be amazed. So you can be amazed at some ants moving along or butterflies or elephants passing by, depending on where you are. But for me, I fell in love with big cats first. And dedicated most of our lives to saving big cats via the National Geographic Big Cats Initiative that we formed, but very quickly understood that the problems facing big cats are the same, with some nuances, that are facing rhinos and even elephants. And so again, it's that thing, we had to do something. Doing nothing is no longer an option for any of us.
Okay, great question. Let's see. I'm going to bring another group here into the call. There we go. Is this Mrs. Vasquez?
Hi, yes. Can I share my screen so you can see my students? Because
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
Okay.
Here, I'll bring the full screen so we can see. Where are you from today, Mrs. Vasquez?
Can you see them?
Can see you.
It's just loading. I'll bring it into the stream.
There it is. Can you see them?
Oh, yeah, I've got that now. There they are. Joining virtually today.
Oh, fantastic. So everybody's virtual. Love that. That's what we do. There's a virtual support.
Here. Okay, so
Where are you joining us from today, Ms. Vasquez?
from Mexico.
Oh, very cool. Great to have you in.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Caro, can you ask a question? Can you mute yourself, Caro? There it is.
Can't hear you yet.
She asked how many rhinos died in a year.
How many rhinos have died in a year?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we took action 4 years ago, because there were over 2,000 rhinos that were being killed in one particular area in southern Africa. And that's when we knew that we had to take action. And so each year, as we all focus on the issue and, you know, try and stop the poaching and stop the trade through the media and obviously through governments, less rhinos are being killed. I think it's now around about 1,000 per year.
But I think that what the media will report is that these numbers are going down. But of course, the fewer rhinos we have, of course, the fewer number of poaching incidents will go down. I think that technically, when we get to below 10,000 rhinos, we're in real trouble. So at the moment, they're threatened, but extinction then rapidly increases below a certain point. So we all have to lean in and do whatever we can to get in behind these rhinos and push them away from extinction.
Okay, I'm going to bring in another group here. We've got some second and third graders with Miss Bennett joining us in Elkinbury in the UK. Let me check your mic. There it is. Hey, boys and girls.
Yeah.
So good to see you. Who's got a question for us today?
Shanoa, you want to answer the question?
No, you want to.
Who wants to answer the question?
The mic is on.
Namir, you want to answer?
Can you hear us?
We got you here.
Okay.
How long can
Take off
rhinos
your mask.
live? How long can rhinos live?
Oh, rhinos can live for about 35 years. And so rhinos, you know, can have a long life if we allow them to. But as well as, if you look at a large part of the economy of Africa is safari tourism. So if we have live rhinos, giving a country the opportunity of 35 years, it's going to bring a huge economy into the country. But if somebody comes in and takes that rhino out, that part of the economy is completely gone. And it's really sad because it leaves a sterile environment.
And within the rhino world, the older a rhino gets, the more wise and the more wisdom it partakes to its society. A little bit like me. So the older I get, the smarter I get. But in the rhino world, they really need the older ones to show them where the dried up water holes are, where the new water is. And so we've got to be careful about saying, let's just manage the old rhinos and get rid of them. And so every single rhino today is precious through its entire 35 years.
All right, I'm going to bring in a grade 12 environmental science class that's joining us. How are we doing, boys and girls? Oh, there we go. We got you unmuted now. I see you sent a great question in the chat. Do you want to go ahead and ask the question?
Okay. Hi there. We just wondered if the rhinos were tagged or tracked after they were released. How do you know that they have been successfully moved, and that we just wondered what the conservation area might look like?
Okay, so great question. Thank you very much. So we do a couple of things. We put anklets on them. So, and these are tags or transmitters that are GPS, so that we can track them just by looking at a computer screen. We know exactly where all of the rhinos are moving. We have a backup tracker as well, which if the GPS fails, we can fly over the area and then pick up a direct signal from them. We also have another mechanism where we've got a transmitter and a receiver in the under the skin in the shoulder, transmitter in the horn, so that if the horn and the shoulder separate by more than 2 meters or so, we realize that the animal is down, has been poached, and poachers are on the run, and then we can track the horn. So there are a number of mechanisms to make sure the animal's safe, that it's moving in a regular pattern, it's not sick or lying down, but also if it's been poached.
Okay. Let's see. So we've got Akash. He's joining us in India, and he wants to know what kind of flexibility or creative skills are important when you're doing your work in the field.
Well, there's a huge amount, and I think opening up our minds and being innovative is definitely one of them, because sometimes, you know, when we first bring a project forward, we'll get everybody saying it's not possible, it's too hard, there's not how are you going to get the money, and on that list goes. So to have that openness to you know, challenge the naysayers and to move forward, I think is really important. And then once we've taken on the project, is how can we inspire you to help support us in raising money to be able to then help support the rhinos? And so that is a huge challenge. Just to give you an example, it was $45,000 US to move one rhino and then to protect that rhino in the field for 3 years. And so it's an ongoing process. We have to keep being vigilant and you know, to protect them, but at the same time, in how do we bring in the money to be able to do that?
I think there are two components, and because you're right. So first of all, to be creative and think on your feet all the time, and always to be leaning forward and have hope. I'll give you an example. I've been bitten by 3 deadly snakes. I've had 17 or 18 bouts of malaria. I've been stung by scorpions 21 times, been hit by elephants 4 times, crashed through aeroplanes, 2 buffalo attacks. And so it makes you think on your feet and get up, dust yourself off, and then go forward into the next solution. So definitely being creative and thinking on your feet, but doing it with a sense of hope and purpose that what you're doing is right, drives me every day.
All right. Very cool. And having size 14 socks helps too in the field.
Always have a pair of size 14 socks with you.
All right. Perfect. So Mrs. Langer joining us. She's representing her class virtually from Cobourg, Ontario. How you doing, Mrs. Langer? Oops. Let me grab your mic. Let me make sure it's on. There we go.
Okay, I wanted to share my screen, but I don't want to make any mistakes and lose my children. So I'm saying hi to all my children that are in parts of Southern Ontario virtually. Tatiana is asking, how long for a baby rhino to come full grown? So we know that they live 35 years. So we're just wondering what that period is like.
Yeah, so the gestation period of a rhino for white rhinos is 18 months. Elephants are 22. So you can see a large mammal really needs that extra time, unlike humans with 9 months. But it's also so that when they're born, they don't have to be cradled like we do with humans. I mean, they straight away can get on their feet and start moving around, and then, of course, finding the teats and being able to suckle. And then their growth phase of baby Beverly was really 4 years for her to be mature.
So she suckles for 18 months up to 2 years. Then at about 4 years, she's shoulder height to her mother. And then at about 5, you could say that she's an adult.
And often that's where, if the mother has another little one, she'll start to move away. If it was a young male, the mother would push the young male out if she has another calf. And actually, I need to quickly tell you a story. There was a situation with baby Beverly and her mother where the young male went out and explored, but he went into areas where it was a little muddy. And we had to rescue him because the rhino monitors found him stuck in the mud.
But what is interesting about the question, actually, is that it's indicative of the fact that every rhino that's born, that gets to maturity, has had a 5, 6, 7 year investment. So the environment invests all that time in bringing up one rhino, as opposed to, say, birds that have a 2 or 3 months period of time. So again, these large mammals we need to take special care of.
All right, we've got one more class to visit live here. I'm going to bring them in. We've got Mrs. Kiefner's third graders. They're joining us in the UK. How are we doing, third graders?
Pointing that way.
You've got a question for us.
Fred, do you have who has a question?
I have a question.
Fred, question. Go ahead, Fred.
Sounds like there's lots.
Rhinos are born per year.
Oh, say it loud. Take down your mask and say it.
How many rhinos are born per year?
How many rhinos are born per year?
That's
Yes.
a tough question you're
Yeah.
asking.
It's a tough question, but what is interesting about it is that at the moment we have roughly 20,000 rhinos. And 3 years ago, we were losing 1,215 a year to poachers, and that was the tipping point. So from that size population, we were normally giving birth to 1,200, but at that point, poachers were killing more than were being born. So today, I would imagine you can calculate on between 1,200 and 1,500.
All right, sounds like you have a friend in the background. Very cool. And then Dereck and Beverly, just to add on that a little bit, an average mother, is it 1 to 2 calves? What's the usual size?
No, the twins are very, very rare. So it would be 1 calf, and that would happen every 4 or 5 years. So I actually personally have never seen a twin.
Yeah.
Beverly happens to be a twin, but I've never seen a rhino twin.
Gotcha. So one more question from you two before we wrap up. What is the farthest distance that you've taken a rhino?
Yeah, so the furthest was from almost the east coast of South Africa, right up into the northern part of Botswana. And I would say in miles, that would be about 2,500 miles.
But I think that's not the challenge on its own.
It would be if we were walking on there.
Exactly, it would be. But our biggest challenge was how to move them as quickly as possible and to be as security sort of awareness as possible. So the challenge was, being able to get big enough planes. The first move that we did, we brought in a plane from Russia, and we could put 10 of these crates on the plane. And what a challenge that was to be able to, watch over 10 rhinos to make sure that they were all calm, getting enough water, the shortest amount of time. Instead of driving them up, which could have taken 8 days, it actually took probably 8 hours. But then once we get them to a certain point, we've got to then get crates, those cranes in to take the crates out, put them on these huge trucks and drive them on roads that really are just bush tracks. And that was where the challenge really starts. And then, of course, driving through water at all these crossings. And that part of it sometimes delays us to not be able to release exactly when we want to. And you saw that nighttime release. That nighttime release went on until about 2 in the morning, which obviously was great and cool for the rhinos, but not that great for humans, because what was happening is we couldn't see in the darkness. And we eventually discovered that there was a lioness that was watching our every move as we were running from one rhino to the other. So better to be releasing during the day.
I didn't crawl in underneath the 10 crate plane. That was too risky. 10 rhinos on top of me was very different to 3. But I think that what's important about this is it's not so much about moving the individual rhinos or saving them one at a time. I think that what we have to remember is if we have a choice, if we've got our hands on the wheel of saving a species or letting it go, that's really an important moment for all of us. These are iconic species, but they are also symbolic. If we let rhinos go, the next species will follow and one after that. So this is in many ways the last stand for us. We cannot let another species go extinct.
All right, absolutely. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing with Rhinos Without Borders. If classrooms want to follow along, whether it's the great work you're doing with the Big Cats Initiative with National Geographic or Rhinos Without Borders, are there some social media channels or websites we should direct them to?
Absolutely. I would first of all start with the Great Plains Foundation website, and that will lead you to every single project we're working on. It'll go directly to the Rhino project or the community projects, because I think it's important to know that you can't do this without involving the community as well. So there's a lot of education, there's a lot of support from the communities, and it's a lot of assistance all the way. And then we both have Instagram, if you wanted to see what was going on a daily basis, and that would be our names, Beverly Joubert at Instagram and Dereck Joubert at Instagram.
All right, perfect. Well, I can't thank the two of you enough, obviously for the great conservation work, and obviously you have a great team behind you. So a huge thank you to the whole team who makes it possible. And thank you so much for joining our classrooms today and making World Rhino Day really special by sharing some of your stories.
Well, thank you very much. I hope that we can convince everybody on the call to become Rhino ambassadors. So please follow us.
All right. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in via YouTube and Facebook today. Thanks for your questions. Thank you to all our live classrooms in Mexico, Canada, the US, the UK, even India today. It was great to have everybody joining us. We have another event coming up from Olpejda in about 15 minutes. So hopefully we'll see you tuning in there. Again, Dereck and Beverly, thank you so much, and everybody behind the scenes as well.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye now.